Welcome back to Indie Ball Nation. It's a late Wednesday afternoon episode recording session, which is a little bit different, but trying to do a little something different because this was a weekend where I wasn't going to do a weekend recap, and then of course it was a major weekend of Indie Ball news, and then the news kept coming on Monday, and now we got Tuesday games to talk about, so I kind of had to pick and choose what I wanted to talk about. So the vibe today is less about the Monday night action, which we'll touch on the scores, or the Tuesday night rather, but more the Indie Ball news, because we had a little something from each of the leagues going on this weekend. So I guess we'll jump in order that these news stories sort of came about, and we'll start with the Atlantic League and their first half coming to an end, because we didn't get a chance to talk about it. A lot of these things I'll talk about again on the Thursday night recording, probably Saturday morning airing of Indie Ball Report, so definitely check that out if you don't already follow. Definitely give that a follow. But the first half ending in the Atlantic League, we talked about a little bit on Indie Ball Pod on Thursday as it was getting dramatic. But it definitely lived up to the hype. First, we'll start in the South Division. We had High Point versus Gastonia. Gastonia, they look to be on their way to the first half title when those 9 player signings they've had throughout this first half really just seem to catch up to them, like really, really aggressively. I mean, punctuated sort of by getting swept by Spire City. All they really need to do was get a win or two off of them. They'd been doing it all year long, but then they get swept, and that leads setting the tone to a Friday night winner-take-all final game of the first half against High Point. High Point, in that game, they'd break through late. They went at 8-1, clinching a playoff berth. That's a tough collapse to see if you're a Gastonia fan. High Point, though, kind of getting a little bit back after they had the same thing happen to them in the first half last year, where they got burned by some contract purchases in the first half. It looked like they had a shot to run away with, and then Gastonia caught them and didn't look back. Shades of last season, though, especially in the playoffs, because remember, these two teams did get together for that first-round playoff series last year for the South Division. Gastonia put in a situation by some questionable umpiring, and it was the same umpire even behind the dish. He wasn't great for either team. I honestly, he made some bad calls in like the 7th and 8th when things really started to get out of hand, but I don't know. I hesitate to say it because it was a popular take that it was the umpire had an effect, but if I'm honest, the calls he missed, for the most part, I don't think it cost them the game. I mean, they gave up 7 runs in 2 innings, so that'll cost you a game. And beyond that, too, I looked at the missed calls going against High Point, and they similarly impacted the probable runs that could have resulted from that, or at least the potential runs, except High Point did not let those runs score. So there's something there for sure, but it's not maybe all that people might think. But that is it. High Point clinches a playoff berth when it comes to September. They get it done early, so that's good for them. On to the North Division, got the Southern Maryland Blue Crabs taking on the Long Island Ducks, and the York Revolution taking on Lexington. And this was Long Island and York going at it because Long Island did a great job making these signings all through the first half, keeping it close. They didn't lead all that much in the division, but they stayed within range, and when it came down to it, they would not let York close the door. Long Island kept it close throughout this whole first half, and then they would remain in a position where they could just, on Friday night, win the division if they could beat the Blue Crabs in Southern Maryland, and if they could capitalize on a York loss. So York had to fall to Lexington. Long Island had to get a win against Southern Maryland. Long Island entered the 9th tied with Southern Maryland 9-1. At just about the same time, York was entering the 9th inning with a 6-5 lead over Lexington. So again, it was both things were favoring York winning this. Within minutes of each other, though, York allows a 2-run single from J.C. Encarnacion in a game which they were a strike away from clinching this thing twice in that 9th inning. That put them behind Lexington 7-6. Meanwhile, Long Island was rallying. They pushed 3 runs across to take a 4-1 lead. And I mean, meanwhile. It was the same time this was going back and forth. With that, the Ducks would hold on to that score. They clinched the North Division. Heartbreaker for York. What does this mean? I mean, for the Ducks and for High Point, that is a huge deal. They can save up their pitching. I know that's been a popular take of late. Last week of the season you don't have to really battle, so you can line up your pitching all you want, but also you can not burn out that bullpen in games so you perceive to be must win, putting guys in situations maybe you don't want to put them in. That's a huge deal. Really lines you up for an advantage in the playoffs. What does this mean for the losers? Well, Lexington, Lancaster, Spire City, Charleston, Staten Island. I mean, it was no mystery that they weren't going to get this done. But they all probably need to win their division to make the playoffs. Southern Maryland, York, and Gastonia, they're all still in competition for the wild card race if either High Point or Long Island would win their division again in the second half. But they are also teams that I think could win the division pretty easily as well in the second half. I don't really see much drop off there, so it's something to keep an eye on, but definitely a benefit to those winners. And that's a tough one for the clubhouse. If you're Gastonia or York, where you're that close, you're York, you're a pitch away. You're Gastonia, you were a game away on multiple occasions from getting it done, making the playoffs again, and now you have to climb that mountain again. That sucks. Moving on from the Atlantic League, and we'll circle back for some scores, but we'll move on for now. The American Association, they announced the Baseball Champions League. Very intrigued in this one. So what is it? It brings together 4 champions of professional baseball leagues. We're looking at the Colombian Professional Baseball League, the Mexican Baseball League, the Cuban National Series, and the American Association. It's the first international tournament of pro leagues in history, which is pretty, I guess, partially surprising, but partially not. I mean, I feel like we would have heard about it, but with all the touring and play between leagues, I mean, I guess we're not really counting the Caribbean World Series in that, I guess. Put a question mark on that fun fact. That was not me. That was someone else who gave that one. So that's quite a claim, but we'll see. Maybe there was one of those like a little asterisk. It's like, when you don't include this or that. But they'll be playing all their games in Merida, Mexico. They're going to host that thing. It's going to be September 28th to October 1st. That's 1 week after the American Association Championship Series ends. Now, when they're not going to be looking at the champion of that series, by the way, which is notable, we're looking at the 2023 champs, not the 2023 champs, but the 2022 champs. So what does that mean? That means from the American Association, you'll have Fargo Moorhead. From Mexico, you'll have Yucatan. From Colombia, you'll have Barranquilla, and you'll have Granma from Cuba. It'll be a round-robin tournament. Everyone's playing each other once. Top 2 play in a final, and then the bottom 2 play for third place. The good things, this kind of tournament is awesome. What a great idea. I love that. It's something I've been a fan of for a long time. I really want to see it in the Indy ball ranks. We'll talk about that. I'm really hoping that this grows and continues to bring more leagues into it. That'd be awesome. There's a lot of talk about even a World Baseball Classic. There's a lot of talk about the Nicaraguan League. All of a sudden had a lot of representation there. You look at the leagues down throughout the Caribbean. Like that's stuff you'd like to see get involved. And then the other Indy leagues, obviously, you want to see them. It's not all good. I have some concerns for sure. I don't like the fact that it's last year's winners for a couple of reasons. Understandable, first of all, that both sort of logistically and for scheduling of these games, you need to know pretty far in advance. And also, with different seasons ending at different times, it's nice to have that, I guess, sort of locked in early who is playing who. I also think it would be, with that, I think it would be nice if, you win, say you're, pick a team, Kansas City in the American Association this year, and then you win the championship series, you're celebrating, and it's like you very much like March Madness, like you win your conference and you qualify for this bigger tournament right after, like a week later. I think that's very cool. But that also turns into the other complication I'm seeing, which is that is late in the year. Most proposals I've kind of put together about indie ball tournaments and things like that have looked more midsummer, like over an all-star break type of thing. And again, it's difficult because every league plays at a slightly different time, or very different time occasionally. But I'm looking at the issues like the obvious ones. Okay, it's Fargo. Fargo's struggling right now. What if Fargo gets bounced in the first round of the playoffs? Now they're 3 weeks later going to be playing a series in Mexico? That's weird. Beyond that, even, I think you get a lot of the guys who go to Mexican League and Winter Ball. I think there's a lot of issues with it. It's going to be tough keeping a good squad together throughout that. I always hate a tournament where it's like you leave it with a lot of, if this guy was around or that guy was around, it would have been different. It feels more like an exhibition, which of course it is, than a big championship between leagues. But I do think it's a great thing. I'm in favor of it. I like it. I'm hoping it grows, hoping it does well. And what I would love to see, and I think I've proposed before, on the American side, I'd love to see an indie ball tournament. And I think not just the best team, but I want to see the best leagues. Like the best of the leagues. So I've proposed before and a mid-season all-star tournament where it's sort of instead of the Atlantic League all-star game and Frontier all-star game and all that, you would have a skills competition of the all-stars from each league, one all-star team from each league, and then you would also have a tournament between all the teams where it's just single elimination. You play each other once. It's random who you're playing. First round game, you have I guess the Atlantic League and the Pioneer. The other one, you have the American and the Frontier. You do that in a day, doubleheader style. And then Saturday, you can go ahead. Or maybe you do it Friday. Do it in a day. I guess that would make sense for pitching and fairness. But you can do it first round that day, and then you can do the championship game and a consolation game the next, and just like that. It's actually like a really good showcase idea. It can put guys in a spotlight if it's, you want an in-demand scouting event to get guys signed. I think that helps out, putting all the players on one field at one time between all 4 of these top indie leagues. I think would be a really good move, especially with a skills competition. So that's that. Speaking of skills competitions, though, we'll move to the Frontier League. Their skills competition was last night. I have not, for the life of me, been able to find some sort of list of who the hell won the thing. So they need to do a better job with that. There needs to be better communication. But the events had bunting, precision hitting, catcher throwing, outfield throwing, and the home run derby. Thoughts? I saw a bit of everything. I watched a few minutes of everything, at least a little more of certain things. But I love the idea of the whole concept and the competitions. It's great. They need a speed one. That's too easy. I mean, you can do it straight line speed. You can do it, racing poles or whatever. Like, you can do it creatively, or you can do it where it's like a base stealing competition where the runner's at first and there's a red light, and then when that light turns green, that's go, and he can, it's as soon as he gets to the bag, that's they stop the clock. I think that's cool. And also then it would have their reaction time in there too, because if you start the clock when it's green, we're talking about what their actual base stealing skills might look like. Pitching should be in there. I mean, there's a few ways you can do that now, especially as data tracking gets better. Have them throwing at targets. Maybe have a velo tracker. Have movement. You can even have points for everything, something like that. Whatever the case may be. There's so many ways to do it. I'm not even going to dig into it, but I do think there should be one. I know guys don't like throwing extra pitches, but hey, you're already there for the All-Star game, so you obviously don't mind it that much. It does seem to move quickly. Looking at that many events, I was like, this thing could drag. I think they got done about 2.5 hours. That's good. That's faster than most games, so I think that's a win. Seems like a good night. I couldn't get a feel for the crowd from what I was watching and the vibe, but the players did seem to really enjoy it, which I liked. I really hope they stick with it. I think they should grow this too. Kind of same feelings I have on that baseball championship league or Champions League. I think it's a really good idea. It's a great start. I'd love to see more. There's room for improvement. I know I noticed this, and my wife's first thought when she saw it was, this does not look legit. Jack, am I right about that?
Yes.
Yep. See, she's here. She's tolerating. But yeah, I mean, I like the kind of feel, almost like backyard baseball feel of using barrels and buckets as targets. But we're trying to convince people that we're trying to not convince people, we're trying to show people that indie ball is legitimate and these are the best of the best. And stacking buckets to aim at while guys hit is not necessarily the vibe. And using rusty oil cans or oil drums is not really the vibe either, I feel like, as targets. And the number one thing is this should look easy for me to say, but it should be an easy fix. Especially if the league is committed to this, they know this idea is going to stick around. Get actual boards to hit at, targets to throw at, and then they can move. It's get a good durable, not wood, but almost like that plasticky hard material. And then they can move between All-Star Weekend hosts, making them just a one-time purchase if you take good care of them. And then there you go. It might be expensive once, but you're going to use them for 20 years if you want to. So I think it's a good idea. Maybe make that investment, Beyond that, though, great idea. I like it. I hope it sticks around. I hope it grows. I'd like to see it in other leagues. As I said, if I did an All-Star Weekend with all 4 leagues, I would absolutely have one. I would have reps from every league in there competing against each other. It would be great. And each league could pick the best of their best, to fight for them. I think that's a great move. Lastly, moving on here, news front, Pioneer League. This is more getting into the scores, too, so we'll just go right from there. Pioneer League's first half is coming to an end. The season ends after this week's games. I think they said the 16th, but they don't play the 16th, I don't believe. I think they play the 15th, unless they're, I think they're on their All-Star weekend. But in the North Division, Missoula is 4 games up on Glacier. They have 4 to play. Glacier has 6 to play still. With the tiebreaker, though, Missoula's magic number is down to 1. They have been struggling. It's funny how good Missoula is, man. Struggling, and I look at it, and they've won 6 of 10. I'd love to know. I don't think they've lost 5 of 10 yet throughout this stretch, or throughout this whole season. They're really good, but they've been able to cut that magic number down to 1 despite those struggles and despite Glacier being hot. Missoula owns the head-to-head tiebreaker on that one by a good bit. Last thoughts, I think Missoula, if they win that's 5 straight halves, which I think has only been done once before, I was told, by a team in the Pioneer League, and that league's been around since 1939. So how about that for Missoula? In the South Division, Ogden leads Boise by 3.5 games. They have 5 to play. Boise has 4 to play. Ogden's magic number, since they also in the tiebreaker, is also down to 1. Looking at Tuesday scores, we'll do a quick run through here, and we'll call it. Missoula sweeps a doubleheader over. I didn't even write it down, so that probably mattered. Missoula sweeps a doubleheader 9-5-4-2. That's the important information. Ogden beats Rocky Mountain 12-11. Grand Junction beat Northern Colorado 17-13. Glacier beat Idaho Falls 8-4, and Boise beat Billings 7-6. American Association Lake Country beats, and we're just looking at last night, by the way. I'm not going through the whole weekend. What are we doing here? I'm looking to do a weekend update hopefully next weekend. I was busy climbing a mountain this past weekend, so that wasn't going to happen. But now I figure we'll cram it in here in a quick way to do it. So anyway, back to the Tuesday night scores. Lake Country beats Sioux City 10-6. Winnipeg takes out Cleburne 5-2. Chicago puts up a couple tutties on Milwaukee, winning 14-9. Good Midwest football game there, boys. Gary South Shore beats. They win. I don't know who they beat. Again, I wrote Gary South Shore beats Gary, so that's good. That's a good sign for how my Wednesday's rolling here. Gary South Shore wins 5-1. Fargo Moorhead squeezes past Lincoln 4-3. They really need that. Fargo was struggling there for a while. Sioux Falls, they blast our new number 1 team, the Indy Ball Top 10 poll. Oof, tough look. They win 13-2 over Kansas City. Sioux Falls getting a little bit hot, by the way. Keep an eye on that team. Atlantic League scores to wrap this thing up. Tuesday night, York beats Spire City 5-3. High Point beats Staten Island 11-9. Gastonia over Charleston 5-3. Lancaster over Long Island 10-8. And Southern Maryland beats Lexington 7-3. I'm not really going to go in standings there because they started their 2 games in their half. I'll also go back to the American Association, by the way. I'll check this out. Milwaukee and Kansas City, they're both leading their divisions by 4.5 up in the American. King County sits a game behind Lake Country in the north for the final playoff spot, and in the south, Sioux Falls is 3.5 games behind Lincoln in the playoff chase. So, pardon me, circling back to the American Association there, I hit some standings notes, but I figured I should. That's what I've got. I mean, a lot of news talk and a lot of, not a lot of scores talk. Hope you don't mind. We'll get back to normal daily recap tomorrow. Back in the rhythm here now that I'm rested up and getting back after it. We'll do another, as I said, Thursday night recording session on the Indy Ball Pod. That should drop on Saturday. I got a fun bit of content that I'm going to put out hopefully this week with him and a few Cutting Room Floor episodes, which you'll see. They'll probably be, I'm leaning toward doing podcast exclusive on that one. So if you're not following us on a podcast platform and you only got us on YouTube, check us out on just about any major podcast platform at Indy Ball Nation. And yeah, follow along there. Thank you as always. Subscribe if you would like. It's okay if you don't. You know, clicking bells and things like that. Not really the thing I like to beg for. So you do you, boo-boo. How about that? Have a good one.
I may not have a lot, but I love what I got. A 4x4 and a good fishing spot. I hope this time my card won't